For this week's edition of SaaS Decoded, I'm doing a video deep dive of my most successful SaaS acquisition, Meet Slack. So I think there's some very interesting lessons that can be learned from this micro SaaS, and I'm going to be sharing all the numbers and going as deep as I can. And I really hope you take something from this video. So what is Meet Slack? Maybe it's a good idea to start there. Meet Slack is a Slack app which helps you start Google Meet sessions directly from within Slack. So I'll give you a quick demo. So I'm in Slack. All I need to do is do /meet, hit enter, and that's going to start essentially a Google Meet session. So I can send this message in a direct message with one person or in a channel with multiple people. I click the button and it's going to take me straight into a Google Meet session. So a very simple app with really one main purpose, to reduce friction of getting into a Google Meet session. And the reason it's quite a popular app on Slack, and I'm going to show you some of those numbers shortly, is a lot of people work with Slack, or a lot of businesses work with Slack, and a lot of businesses work with Google Meet. So, you know, if you're working with these two tools, you know that multiple times a week you're needing to jump into ad hoc video sessions, and this app just helps people do that. So I acquired this app, let's see, back in 2023, in June 2023, and I acquired it, as we can see here, for $97,000. At the time, I'm trying to remember, it was doing, well, actually, don't remember off the top of my head what it was doing. Somewhere in the range of 15 to 1800 MRR. Anyway, we'll try and look at that in a second, but let's just go through these numbers. So the acquisition was for 97,000. This was basically the extra fees for escrow that I paid as part of the deal. So the total acquisition cost was $97,456. I took seller financing. So if you're not familiar what that is, basically I gave a portion of the money up front to the seller. So basically, if it was 97,000 before fees minus 48,500, it's probably 50%. Yeah, so 50% I gave up front, and the rest was through seller financing. So basically, I needed to pay off this as a loan that the seller gave me for the acquisition. So I didn't have 97,000 in cash, so I was lucky that the seller agreed to this. And I'm going to show you in a second what that looked like. But fundamentally, I pay $2,500 a month, every month, towards paying down this loan. So essentially, I take the cash generated by the app and I pay down the loan. Now, part of the agreement wasn't actually for $2,500 a month; it was less, but I wanted to kind of pay it off quicker, so I committed to $2,500, even though I didn't need to send so much every month. This was the interest on the loan. So typically with seller financing, there's an interest rate. I usually negotiate a very low interest rate. So you can see here, this was practically nothing in interest. So basically the total cash portion, let's see what I did here. So total minus seller financing plus this. Yeah, so I gave 48,500 up front, and then this was the rest that I basically paid off. I'm trying to remember why I call this total cash portion. Anyway, so I'll come back here in a second, but let's next look at some numbers. So now I'm in Stripe for Meet Slack, and if we come down here, we can see. Well, actually, let me start here. So notice this big spike in June 2023. That's because the seller. This is kind of an interesting problem that we had when I first bought the app. But basically, when you create a Stripe account, it's registered in whichever country you're living in. So the previous owner of Meet Slack was actually, I think, in the Czech Republic, somewhere in Europe. So his Stripe account was, registered as being in the Czech Republic, and my businesses are in the US. So we actually needed to create a new Stripe account and then migrate everything over. So this is why you see such a big spike here in customers in June 2023 when I acquired the app. Now, customer is a bit misleading here. Essentially, any time a Slack workspace installs the app, it's pushing them into Stripe. So think of this as basically users, not customers. Active subscribers is actual customers. Okay, you can see here it's a nice graph. Now, since this trend is also a bit misleading because when we did the migration, those that were active were actually set to being in trial for their new renewal. So it's not like I started with 17 customers. It's actually a lot more. But after 12 months, basically, let's see. So after 12 months around here, you can see the shape of the line changes. That's because after a year after the acquisition, all the active subscribers became active. So it's slightly misleading. Same with MRR, etc. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these graphs, because I know some of you are good with your numbers. You're going to be scratching your head why these trends look funny. So overall, 130K net volume. That's after fees and refunds. But what I want to show you here, first of all, is number of new customers. So notice around 300. It's dropped a bit this year. Call it 250 to 300 new installs a month. That's around 10 a day is happening. That's another key thing. But notice the number of new subscribers every month is not going up at such a rate. So the first kind of thing about Meet Slack is you got to consider this a nice to have SaaS. So, it's like I said, very much a nice to have. Not everyone needs it. Not everyone's going to pay for it. A lot of people install it. So that's a good thing. The top of funnel is very healthy. But the conversion to paid is low. So overall, there's been 30,803 unique workspaces, but I'm only sitting in 387 active subscribers. Okay, so the conversion rate is very, very low. And I'll talk a bit about pricing and that a bit later. Next thing to look at, we'll come back to MRR and ARR. Average revenue per user is another key thing. Only less than $11. So average revenue per user is basically, you take all the revenue in a given month, divide by the number of customers that paid. So it's like the average charge amount, fundamentally. So it's low. Okay. Lifetime value is pretty nice. Fluctuates a lot because there's been some big payments, and I'll talk about that. And you can see it's most of the time it's in that 400 to 550 range. Subscriber churn rate, this is very key. Historically, it's been very, very low. It's been a bit higher this year, and in particular among the larger accounts, which is a bit of a shame. So If we come up here quickly to MRR, you can see the dip here in the start of the year, which wasn't, great. I've written a bit about that on my other Substack. I'll just cross promote for a second. Coffee Plus Revelation, where I kind of share my entrepreneurial journey. I've written a bit about that in that newsletter. It's starting to recover nicely. Got one enterprise account that's recently been added to Stripe. So hopefully that will convert. Next thing I want to show you, I'm not sure why that camera's messing out. So I want to show you MeetSlack's pricing, because I think this is a very key point. There's three interesting aspects about the pricing for MeetSlack. Number one, the pricing is very, very low. And that's really because it's already got a low conversion rate. And it's, like I said, it's in that category of nice to have. Some businesses are happy to pay for it, but most aren't. So you can't charge a higher rate. But with that being said, how the pricing is set up is the larger the business, the more they're going to pay. So starting out with Seed, which most of the subscribers are Seed, these are workspaces up to 50 members, and they pay $50 a year. Scale 150 a year, that's from 50 to 150. From 150 to 500, they pay $500 a year. And then above 500, they pay $2 per member per year. Okay, so enterprise. This enterprise pricing didn't exist when I acquired the app. Instead, basically, this growth tier was the highest tier. So anything above 500, you paid 500, and that was it. I decided to kind of cap that at 500 and introduce the enterprise plan. At the moment, I think there's 4 workspaces on enterprise, with the largest paying over $2,000 a year. So it's been quite successful. I was hoping for 2 enterprise each year. It hasn't been at that level yet, but not too far off. It's also free up to 3 people. It used to be free up to 10. I dropped that. And then a very interesting thing that I did was, initially there was a 14-day trial. I extended that to 60 days. Now, why did I do that? Well, first of all, I did some analysis during my due diligence before I bought the app, and I noticed that when a lot of people in a workspace had used the app, the likelihood of them becoming a paid subscriber went up significantly. So I said to myself, okay, then what can I do to increase the likelihood of more people in the workspace using it? And the answer was just give them more time. So let word of mouth spread. So I actually increased it to 60. I think overall it was a positive change. I'm not really losing anything because, as you'll see shortly, the installations are organic. I'm not paying there's no marketing budget or marketing activities. It's all organic. So I don't really lose anything by giving them a long time to try it out. Another interesting thing which I've recently realized is there's cases of some larger workspaces that move from Zoom to Google, like Google Meet for video, and they want an extended period of time to try out the new stack, and then some of them will start using MeetSlack at the same time, and they want just more time to try it out. So there's nothing really, I don't lose anything by giving a 60-day trial. So that's the pricing. The next thing I want you to notice is, by default, we're pushing the annual pricing. So it's almost always better to get a business to pay you upfront for the year than to pay monthly. So this wasn't a decision I made. The previous owner did this, and I thought this was very clever. is if you kind of go through the sign up flow and you reach the checkout page, by default you're being pushed the annual, and the annual pricing is very low, right? You're looking at $4.20 a month. 50 divided by 12. And if you've got more than 50 employees in Slack, you can pay $150 a year for an app, right? So it's by default, we're pushing the annual. And I want you to see here in Slack, these are the different pricing, the pricing tiers, I guess you could say, for the plan. So Seed is the first tier, the $50 tier. Notice how many are per year versus per month. So we have 310 on the annual pricing for Seed and only 6 on the monthly. And there's a few legacy, right? So the vast majority are taking the annual, and that's great because, it's $50 over and over and over again, and we get all that cash up front, and we don't have to, and then they don't have to worry about renewal for 12 months. The growth plan, same thing, 25 active on 500 a month, and 1 on the monthly. And he actually joined very recently, so it was basically 100% on annual. So that's the pricing. Let's go back here and look at some other numbers. So very cheap, as I said, which is why the average revenue per user is very low. This is not ideal. Ideally it's north of 50. Our average revenue per user, but because we're dealing with a micro SaaS that's a nice to have, it's going to be very difficult to get that kind of, you're not going to get that kind of ARPU. In terms of MRR, so like I said, we hit a nice 4.16 in December, and then we had a lot of churn in the beginning of the year, unfortunately, and it dropped down to 3.8, and then it kind of recovered slightly, and now we've got that new enterprise, which is at 2K a year is what I've quoted them, and I need to see if they're going to convert. That'll be in October, I'll know, because they're going through an assessment phase at the moment. Still very nice for 4K. That comes to just over 50K for the year in ARR. As I showed, lifetime value is great. So far, very nice. What I want to show you now is the economics behind the actual acquisition. So, like I said, I bought this for $97,000, $48,500 up front. Okay, now I remember. So, okay, anyway, $48,500 up front, and then the loan. And you can see here every month I've plotted the numbers. So over here we've got the expenses. We have Stripe fees. Stripe takes a portion of every transaction. North Flank is for the host of the app. The cloud, services. Postmark is what I use for emails, just to let people know their trial is going to be coming to an end. Also pushing discounts to try and get them to convert, etc. Namecheap is for the domain host, and then Netlify. I've just gone blank. What is Netlify for? Okay, not important. Maybe I'll come back to that. But overall, you can see the expenses are pretty low. In an average month, we're looking at about $100. Obviously, the fees are going to be higher when the app is making more money, right? So anyway, you can see here month 1, month 2, month 3, etc. The revenue coming in every month. And then, like I said, the first 2 months, based on the contract, I didn't have to pay any seller finance, and then I paid $2,500. Now, you can see I basically paid the loan over 19 months. So almost 2 years, or just over a year and a half, I paid that loan. So you can see at the bottom here, percentage of investment recuperated. For the first 2 years, basically, I'm not getting anywhere near my money back, just because I'm paying off that loan. Now, MRR over that time was growing, but not at a crazy rate, right? You're looking at around, I think it was around 22% last year, which isn't bad. But because this is a nice to have app, and I wasn't pushing the marketing, I wasn't running too many experiments, I kind of had to accept a pretty slow growth rate. But once again, it's very organic, very passive. I'm not spending much time on this app at the same time. During this period, I'm working on my agency and doing other things. Now, once the loan was paid off, now obviously we don't have that expense, that deduction of the cash. So the growth now in getting the recuperating the investment obviously grew significantly. And you can see last month I actually passed 100%. So last month was the 37th month. I basically recuperated the money I had spent, and now I'm kind of in the green, and everything on this at this point forward is pure profit. Obviously, the app has grown in terms of its MRR, so its valuation's gone up. So I could technically sell it, even though I didn't get any cash back yet. I could still sell it, and make a decent return on my money. So this is revenue generated per year. You can see last year was just under 50K. So far in 2026, we're at 23,000. I'm not including the first week of July. This is cash recuperated. So you can see like basically no cash until that loan was paid off. Last year I'd finished paying off the loan, so the money came up. Recuperated was a lot higher, and really at 16,000 recuperated. So we sum all of this up, and we're at over 50K. Cash recuperated lifetime. Yeah. Now this is in relation to this, which is the cash portion that I paid. Now remember, so this is the loan amount, and that's been paid off completely, and then the remaining is the cash. So it's basically this plus this, 99,000 against this, right? The total amount. So, not to get too much into the business side of it, but with kind of a slow growth rate and seller financing, obviously I'm paying taxes. This is also why the cash recuperation is slow, because I'm paying corporate tax. My businesses are registered in the US, so that's 21%. I'm paying on all the profit. So you can see here, this is my gross profit, almost 94%, which is very high. But then obviously there's taxes I've got to pay on top of the profit. And then what's left is what is cash recuperated, right? So it took 37 months, like just over 3 years, to recuperate my money. Now, that's not bad. If you think about it, it's a 33% return, cash on cash return on the initial, on basically the cash portion that I put down. Plus the valuation's gone up, so you got to take that into consideration. Now, I'm not taking into consideration inflation here, so I'm not technically yet 100%, but you probably need to discount this down by 2 to 3% a year to be completely accurate. So I just want to mention that as well. So I'm really happy. 3 years to recuperate is not bad. Ideally, it's 2.5 if you're two to three is even better, obviously. But it's difficult to align everything, especially with this type of SaaS. So that was kind of a major lesson for me. One other thing I just want to show you is why does the economics kind of work here. This will only work if there's some kind of organic exposure. And since I'm in a marketplace, I'm going to get a lot of exposure. So if I do, if someone search Google Meet, just to show you, you can see it's a third app listed here. Same for the term Meet. It's over here. And that's what brings around 10 installs a week. And what's brilliant is there's no discrimination here, meaning I'm not only being exposed to SMB or mid-market or enterprise. I'm getting the full picture, right? So I can't really expose the exact customers that I've got, but you can imagine I'm getting, Meet Slack is being installed by a very small agency all the way up to the biggest enterprises in the world. And that's what I've managed in some cases to close multiple $1,000 annual contracts with some of the larger businesses. So it's always good if you can to try and have pricing set up in a way where it's uncapped, that it can actually be it can work for very large businesses, because it's kind of common sense, but you can close one enterprise might be equivalent to getting 50 or 100 smaller businesses throughout the year. So I've been fortunate that Meet Slack set up in that way. And then just the final point I'll mention, my plans for Meet Slack at the moment, I'm happy to just collect the cash. This is my largest SaaS in my portfolio. And, it's bringing a lot of money every month, thousands of dollars you can see up here. The only thing that I will say is that if the churn continues to, if I see another dip and then towards the end of the year, there's another dip and I'm starting to lose more and more of the larger accounts, the growth rate of the subscriber base is still going up. But, if I'm losing $500 a year accounts and I'm only signing 2 to 3 $50 accounts, then it's going to continue to dip until it kind of evens out. So what I'm kind of thinking about is either dropping prices, especially for this growth tier, maybe making it 250 or potentially getting rid of it completely and just having the 150, just to sign up more potential customers to kind of counter the churn of the $500 plan accounts, which I'm seeing quite a lot of. That's one option. Another option is just to sell it. Before the MRR, drops too much further, is to kind of cash in my chips and say, okay, it's been a good run, and I could probably get, if I sold this today, 100 to 150K, which would be a nice chunk of change. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Time will tell how performance is for the rest of the year, and hopefully things continue improving, and then I'll just hold it indefinitely and just collect 40 to 60K a year, and then recycle that into additional acquisitions or paying my salary, whatever I decide. So that's it. I think this video has gone on quite long. If you have any questions on this, let me know in the comments under the video. I'll be happy to dive into any details that I didn't cover in the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.